Let's have a little chat today about the expectations that you're putting on the relationships in your life. So, lately, we've had a lot of things happen with certain family members, and we've had to really evaluate um, what boundaries we're going to set, what expectations I was placing on that person simply because they were who they were in the family. And this goes for like all relationships. So I did this with my mom, I did this with my partner, my husband, I did this with um my kids. Like I kind of just had these expectations simply because this is what the relationship was. And when those expectations weren't met, mind you, I didn't speak these expectations to anybody. And so then when these expectations weren't met, I got resentful, I got irritated, mad, grumpy, sad, like just all the feels around it. And so I want you to really think about the relationships that you have in your life. And for me, I think a big one was with my mom, me expecting her that just because she was my mom, that she would show up as a certain way, like in a certain way for me, for my kids. And when that didn't happen, I was sad. I was upset. I was like, see, like this is how it's been my entire life. And I have had to navigate, where do I put the boundaries in place with this person? Where was I placing expectations on them with just expecting them to show up in a certain way simply because they were that parent? And as I started to become aware of the expectations I was placing on them, then my husband and I would be having a conversation, and he's like, well, this person should do this because they're this. And I'm like, yes and no. Because again, we all have our own free agency. We all have our own free choice to make the decisions that we want to make. And yeah, society paints a picture of what relationships should be, or more or less shouldn't be, in media. But when we really define, what do we want this relationship to be, and does the other person know? And so I know there's another experience, and I know I've talked about it in a few episodes on here. I've talked about it on my social medias, but um, it's the expectation that my husband and I placed on each other simply because we were married, simply because we were partners. And when I started therapy, therapy was all around rebuilding the relationship with myself, self love, and really working on my people pleasing tendencies. And a lot of those come from, this is a safety mechanism. So, for those of you who don't know much about like why you people please, you just know that you do it. A lot of times we create this behavior when we are kids, and it is to keep us safe. So if you've heard of like the 5 responses, like you have fight or flight, fawning, or people pleasing essentially is what it is. Fawning's like one of the newer like trauma responses kind of. Um, so you have all of these responses, right? Fight or flight, fawning, people pleasing, and really there's a lot of intelligence in these reactions and these responses to things, and that is ultimately for our own survival. That is to keep us safe. So for me, and maybe it's the same for you, people pleasing was a way to keep the peace. It was to keep the peace with everybody around me. I did not like confrontation at all. It makes me shake. Um, I have gotten way better with it now. And people pleasing was one of the big ones that I started working on. Well, as I started working on the people pleasing, this was me no longer picking up other people's stones. And so what's interesting is I look at the first, let's just say like 5 to 7 years of my marriage, and with my husband, I was the one picking up the stones. He didn't ask me to. Did he have expectations simply because I was his partner? Yes. But he never asked me to pick up any of his stones. I took that upon myself because that was my way of keeping the peace and just making everything great for everybody else and putting myself on the back burner. And so his perspective of the first several years of our marriage are very different than my perspective, because my perspective, I was the one taking care of literally everything. And then he would go to work and come home and do whatever. And that was just it. Like, he'd go hunting on the weekends, like do whatever he wanted. And I was just like, oh yeah, that's fine. Yep, that's great. But then I would be like pissed off about it. And then the resentment would grow. And that was how I survived. Well, when I started therapy, we really started working on this and we really started picking this apart. And I really saw the beauty and the intelligence behind why I did all those things and why I was doing what I was doing. And it's the same for you. Is you're trying to keep the peace. You're trying to just keep harmony in your household. You're trying to keep harmony in the relationship. And that's a survival mechanism. So don't judge it. Don't be harsh with yourself and being like, oh my gosh, I wish I could stop doing this. Like, also see the beauty in it. It has kept you safe for all these years. But then as we grow, now we learn, well, we actually are safe and we actually don't have to do this anymore to be safe. And this actually feels really bad because now I'm really like irritated with the person that I'm doing it for, and they never even asked me to do it for them. And so now we get to start to navigate ending the picking up other people's stones. So when I started doing this in my relationships, yeah, like people get irritated, people get upset, people get mad. Like me and my husband have had a few conversations where he was like, I just thought you would do this because you're my wife, like you're my partner, you're the person that I feel comfortable asking for help from. Let's unpack that. Let's think about that. Where are you willing to step out of your comfort zone? Because another thing for us is it's really hard to ask for help outside, but we'll ask for help from the people within our home all day long. And even I used to feel guilty for like asking my kids for help or asking my husband for help. And what I've come to realize is that they truly want to help. The kids, maybe not so much. They don't love the chores, but like my husband truly wants to help, right? But what we're never taught is that maybe we have a choice in where we draw the line on that help. Like if it comes to sacrificing ourselves to drive a couple hours to meet them, to pick up a dog to bring back to the vet so that they can go back to hunting, maybe that's where a boundary gets to get drawn. That's where one got drawn for me of like, I'm actually not going to put my work on hold for the day so that I can come get the dog. If you want to call anybody else, go for it. And of course, again, then he gets to choose to pick up that stone because it's his, and he can decide, okay, am I just going to keep this dog at camp, or am I going to drive it to the vet myself, or am I going to ask for help from somebody else, which is super uncomfortable in the beginning. So I want you to ask yourself, like in your relationships, especially within your close family, where are you sacrificing yourself? Where are you abandoning yourself to meet the expectations others have placed on you? And where are you placing expectations on others and not allowing yourself to like stand in your own power and maybe make a different decision and not expect that of them? Or if you do expect that of them, are you making it known to them? These are my expectations. These are my boundaries. I'm just letting you know here. Can you abide by these? Can you follow these? And it's not in a way of like, oh, I'm going to be a complete bitch. It's, this is what I'm not available for. Are you okay with that? And if they're not, you get to decide, especially in a relationship, in a partnership. Then you get to decide, what do you want to do with that? Because you don't have to abandon yourself to meet the needs of others. You also get to meet the needs of yourself. You also get to protect yourself. And so I just want you to start to recognize, like, where are you expecting others to show up in your life? And you're expecting them to show up in a certain way simply because they are your mom, your dad, your brother, your aunt, your husband, your wife, like whatever that relationship looks like. Where are you placing expectations? And are they known to the other person? And if they're not, I challenge you. It's a hard conversation. It's not always easy, right? Because it's uncomfy. We're taught not to show emotion. We're taught to just like stuff it down. We're taught to serve others. We're taught to help. And yeah, that's great. But you can still do all of those things and still have that boundary and lighten your load on the expectation you're placing on others. And so when you are able to, now I just want to talk a little bit about releasing that expectation. When we allow ourselves to just like release the expectation that we're placing on others, let's just say it's a hard relationship and you're like, actually, I don't want to have that conversation. Then where can you just release the expectation? Where can you release, oh, they're just not going to show up this way? And that's okay. Now, what do I want that relationship to look like? How can I protect myself? How can I protect my kids and my family? And just no longer expect them to show up in any certain way because I already know that they're not. And just release it. And so that's an option too. So I just want you to know that, like, in any circumstance, any situation in your life, any relationship that you are in, there are always options. You are never stuck in one. You get to choose to release your expectations, and you get to choose to set a boundary, and you decide what that looks like for you. And you take care of yourself, you take care of your family, and that is all that matters. And I will talk to you next time.